Okay, guys, I'm looking at Pete Walker's webpage, and I read a book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving, and a couple of years ago, end of 2017, as part of my healing journey. And as part of my healing journey, I've been able to observe my own blossoming and growth and the way I interact with people and various things. And as a result of that, and seeing my own development as a human being, I've sharing what I know that worked for me so that enables other people to get real about their own lives and what their needs are and what their wants are and how they want to live, instead of repeating the same old patterns of trauma that were given to us. And what I have also found, that people who've been through trauma have so many gifts that they are unaware of. They can have empathy, they can be full of love, they can be full of kindness, and they can have qualities that they just don't realize exist because they've been so downtrodden as children. And what can happen as we develop into adults, we will often choose people, bring people into our lives that are maybe quite like our parents were. And it's not something we do intentionally, it's just that we've been given a marker of what's normal. So when we see behaviors that we don't like, often it takes us quite a long time to pick up on it. So then we'll play a pattern or a game with people where we're going around in circles on particular subjects that we don't need to do. So to cut to the chase, the best thing to do is to do some investigating on your own, and then with people that you are close to, people that are emotionally available to you, you can talk about this stuff and begin to work out how you do relationship. I'll give you an example of late with this lockdown. There's a very good girlfriend of mine who we decided that, that if there's any fire in us or disagreements that go on between us, that we would have a timeout, and we would agree that it would be 24 hours as an example, so that we know that as we're going through this difficult period, that we're not left without people we love. Now, not all people are going to be able to work with you emotionally, or we're not going to be able to work with all people either. We're going to have to choose a selection of people that we feel we can, integrate with at this time and feel safe with, and people that aren't going to trigger us. We need people that are loving, we need people that are emotionally available, and people we can talk to. And when we have that one-to-one with somebody else or a few people, it means that then we've got the ability to be able to help others. Like, as part of my work of helping people online and doing, one-to-ones on astrology and talking about complex PTSD or trauma, then it means that, and showing people the tapping, the Faster EFT to get out of anxiety, it means that I've got emotional availability to others because I'm having my emotional needs met. So one thing we can do is that this, I want you to look at, is on this particular webpage, it's Pete Walker and Complex PTSD, I've just said. And here he's got an article on tools for lovingly resolving conflict. So I'm going to read through it because it's very short and you might not want to read it. So if I read it for you, then you've got this information that you can recall and you will remember. So he says that here is a list of techniques and perspectives I've gathered over the years to help couples resolve conflict as lovingly as possible. When I give it to couples that I work with, I ask them to take time at home to read it out loud together and to discuss each one as much as necessary to see if they can agree to adopt it as a guideline for handling conflict. When I first got together with my wife 9 years ago, we spent considerable amount of time on a weekend trip discussing these guidelines, one at a time, and airing our concerns, enthusiasms, and reservation about using them. Over subsequent years, we refined our usage of them and have evolved a communication style around our conflicts that has helped us to keep our intimacy healthy and ever growing. So this isn't particularly about, trying to fix other people, because what we will find is that people are who they are, and some people are not emotionally available for us. So we don't want to try and fix people who are not emotionally available. What we want to do is, where there is love between us, be it friends or be it with, a marriage or whatever, or deeper stuff, then what we can do, marriage probably is as deep as you can go, but, the point would be that friendships are just as valuable and just as important and can be deeper sometimes than people's marriages. You know, it's quite interesting world we live in, you know, because we can choose our friends. But again, we can have fiery moments with friends, particularly at this time on disagreements with things. So here I'm going to show you and read through these steps, 22, and then talk about timeout, and then that's it. So what he says, number one, normalize the inevitability of conflict and establish a safe forum for it. Discuss and agree to as many of these guidelines as seems useful. So what he's saying is normalize the inevitability of conflict. So what he means by that is that conflict is normal in everyday life and in relationship. People have conflicts. If people pretending they're not having conflicts, then they're not really speaking their truth to you. We all have conflict. It's just part of life. Number two, the goal is to inform and negotiate for change and not punish. Punishment destroys trust. So if we begin to punish others or they begin to punish us because we've had some conflict, then it's going to destroy trust. Love can open up the ears of others' hearts. So for instance, you know, if we're loving to somebody and they don't receive that and we use loving words, there's not a lot we can do about it. But clearly this list is to resolve conflict lovingly. Number three, imagine how it would be easiest to hear about your grievances from the other. Say it as it would be easiest for you to hear. So you want to discuss that with the other, like how would you, and we did this with my friend, how would we resolve it, our differences? So I was going through a bit of a difficult emotional time the last week, and she, you know, she wanted, my friend, for instance, wanted to give me advice, and she asked me how would she best dealing with me at this time. And I explained to her that I needed her to lend an ear, and I didn't really need like harsh advice, because there's a lot of advice we know, but sometimes we need others to hear. And she's been a brilliant friend. So then on this, number four, preface complaints with acknowledgement of the good of the other and your own mutual relationship. So, you know, we want to acknowledge the other's complaints, and this is a very healthy thing to do, acknowledge it. And, you know, it's not about blame. Number five, no name calling, sarcasm, or character assassination. So we want no name calling, no sarcasm or character assassination, because when people fall out, you know, generally it will just make it worse if people, you know, assassinate somebody's character, for instance. And when that happens to us, it can be very painful when people just pick out our bad points and don't pick out our good points, and they just tell us that we're loopy or there's something wrong with us, and they don't tell us what's good about us. So again, it's about being an adult in these situations. Number six, no analyzing the other or mind reading. So we need to work on that also. And this is doing this together, reading a list together and working it out. Number eight, be dialogical. Give short, concise statements that allow the other to reflect back and paraphrase key points to let you hear are accurately being heard, that you let you know you are accurately being heard. So for instance, if I say to you, you saying that to me, this particular word really hurt me, then I would, or for instance, if you said that to me, that really a word really hurt you, then I would acknowledge that and say, I understand that. I would mirror back to you and say, I understand, I hear what you're saying. That's all that's needed sometimes. Reflect it back. Number nine, no denial of the other's rights. So he's got something called the Bill of Rights here, which you can see my pointer, my mouse there, where he says Human Bill of Rights. You can look at that. That's all of our rights as human beings, preferably. Number 10, differences are often not a matter of right or wrong. Both people can be right and merely different. Be willing to sometimes agree to differ. So sometimes we have to agree to differ, that we've got different belief systems, for instance. Avoid you statements. Use I statements that identify your feelings and experience of what you perceive as unfair. So what that means is, and I'm quite good at this, when I have conflict with people, I don't say you. I say I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I bring it back to myself. I don't do the you, because the minute we say you to another person, we're going to put their back up, because it's slaughtering somebody else in so many words, and placing it all on them, and that's unfair. So number 12, one specific issue with accompanying identical behavior at a time. So do one thing at a time. Ask yourself what hurts the most to try and find out your key complaint. So I know that I've had a situation where my key complaint has been that somebody has not been emotionally available to me, and I've had to work with that this week. And I've had to do it on my own because there's been nobody else to, it's like there was just complete shutdown. But I've had a girlfriend who's been able to help me work through that I've been hurt by somebody not being emotionally available to me. And that's, good that we've got our friends at these times as well, particularly when we're all in social distancing and, we're not seeing people that we want to see as well. So number 13, stick to the issue until both persons feel fully heard and take turns presenting the issue. Number 14, no interrupting or filibustering. So, no interrupting, sit and listen. Number 15, present a complaint as lovingly and as chargelessly as possible. Number 16, timeouts. If discussion becomes heated, either person can call a timeout, 1 minute to 24 hours, as long as he or she nominates a time to resume. So agree that, it's an agreement between two people. It's not like I'm having timeout and, you agree on timeout and you agree the time frame. Because if we don't agree time frames, then, that can just cause more anxiety to people. Number 17, discharge as much of accumulated charge beforehand as possible. And number 18, own responsibility for any accumulated charge in the anger that might come from not talking about it soon enough, because sometimes things have built up and there can be other things behind our behavior. Number 19, own responsibility for accumulated charge displaced from other hurts. So that's really important too. Number 20, commitment to grow in understanding of how much of the charge comes from childhood abuse and neglect. We've all got that. We've all got trauma. And what we do is that we'll go back to our childhood trauma or past relationships or past marriages or whatever, where our needs were not met. And then we'll project that onto somebody. And then we won't think about what's really the core issue. So what we can do, and this isn't Pete Walker, but something that Simon Forster, I work in evolutionary astrology as in part evolutionary astrologer. When I've had Zoom meetings with him, he's on YouTube, brilliant guy, has a channel, so you can check him out. But what he said to me is, we look at, why is my nervous system inflamed? So instead of just telling the story all the time, I'm upset because of this, and this, we sit there and say, why is this, inflaming my nervous system? And then we get right to the bottom of what an issue is. Number 21 is commit to recovering from the losses of childhood by effectively identifying, grieving, and reclaiming them. And then number 22 is apologize from an unashamed place. Make whatever amends as possible, including your intention to correct your behavior in the future. Explain your extenuating circumstances as evidence of what you were not trying to be hurtful. So I've got quite adult in that, but the thing is, whether you get that back from another human being is another thing. So the whole point of this is not just doing this list on your own, but sit down with a friend and do it. We can save many a relationship and so many things with this tool. I'm not going to read the timeouts. I'm going to leave it there, and then you can, if you've got any questions or you want to book a session with me for $20 up until this social distancing is over. I'm going to do to the end of May anyway. I'm doing astrology. I'm showing people how to tap to get rid of anxiety, which is EFT. And I'm also doing the complex PTSD trauma work, and because I've read so much on got so much information and wisdom on it, and done great work with myself personally. And then the astrology is a wonderful tool to look at our, to how we can get to move ahead in life as well. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.